on the sheet located on the table by the double doors to my right. And please note that the council procedure bylaw states that questions will only be taken on staff reports or other business items. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for that. Just trying to figure out my technology here and worry about everybody else's. For late items today, we have the addition of delegations for agenda item 7A1, non-market housing delivery system pilot. And those delegations in order are number 1, Dave Whitty, number 2, Levin Calhart, and number 3, Bob Moss. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you. And we do have a delegation under item 7B2, the urban canopy assessment. We are adding a delegation from Deanna Fort. May I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Perino, seconded by Mayor Krogh. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. May I have a motion for adoption of the minutes as circulated? We have 3 sets of minutes from May 11th, June 8th, and June 15th. Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Perino. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. We are into agenda planning now. Ms. Gurry is going to lead us through our upcoming topics and initiatives.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for getting that last lead item I missed. For upcoming topics and initiatives, you'll see on your original agenda package, we have those listed for the next meeting, which is September 28th, 2026. Items that have been approved and that are on the agenda are sea level rise management plan and school zones. So those are reports that will be coming forward. For November, which is the next GPC after that one, we have incentives that support city plan, and this is a follow-up report based on a previous council motion. And for future 2027 GPC meetings, dates to be determined at this point, we have a zoning bylaw update, which is again, just a standard update, draft bylaw informed by stakeholder engagement. So that's it, Chair. This would normally be the time that if there were any items that the committee wished to see added to the September, in this case, or November meetings, now would be the appropriate time. And staff could see if we could arrange to have those done in time for those meetings. So if there's any input for that, now would be the time to accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you to Ms. Gurry. This is something I've been meaning to bring forward for some time, and I was reminded at a recent RDN meeting by a motion made by Director Melanson. So my interest is in having a discussion or information from staff regarding the current use in the city of generative AI throughout our organization, just so we can get a sense of how it's used, where it's used, and the extent of its use. No hurry is on that as far as I'm concerned, and of course it depends on other councillors supporting that suggestion.
Are you making that motion?
I will make a motion if that's appropriate. Thank you.
Second that. Okay, thank you. That's seconded by Councillor Perino. All in favor of adding that as a topic for a future GPC? Thank you. That carries unanimously. Not seeing hands from anyone else, thank you very much. We will move now into reports. Under Prosperous Nanaimo, we have a non-market housing delivery system pilot report to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. The report you have in front of you this afternoon is in response to a presentation and ultimately council direction from back in May. So at your GPC meeting in early May, you received a presentation from NPC, the Nanaimo Housing Working Group, and the Anchor Corporation, coming to council with advocating for a non-market housing delivery system and requesting $300,000 to support that work. The subsequent motion, which was ultimately passed by council at your meeting at the end of May, is included in the report, and was asking for staff to return back with options on how to proceed with this proposal. So this report is really in response to that request, Chair. A couple things. The report goes through and it breaks down the proposed project, phasing, timing, and budget. And it ends with a couple of options for the committee to consider if you want to continue to proceed with this work. The first is a $75,000 contribution, or sorry, a grant type to Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation to be asking for support in principle. That would allow us to go back and work further on details on if this would be viable and if NPC would be willing. Something we'd bring back to council that would, and the advantages and disadvantages are outlined in your report, but allows us to come back to council with some further details on that. And the other is if council, if the committee wished to fully support the intent of this work, would actually be to do a full request for proposals to bring in someone to help us with a housing lab, which would be the first phase of the proposed work. Madam Chair, I think the recommendations, if you read the report, it outlines issues with procurement. So a $300,000 request is in excess of what our procurement policy allows for, and our procurement policy is consistent with trade agreements and law. We can award up to $75,000, but anything after that under our policy requires us to go to a bid process. So that's why the two recommendations and not proceed directly with the $300,000. We have looked at different options and discussed different options, including, putting funding through another organization, and we found that those were not anything we could do and still comply with our standards. So those are the recommendations. I know you have delegations here this afternoon, so we're happy to take questions before or after.
Thank you. Okay, so does anyone have any questions at this time before I invite up our delegations? Not seeing any. So our first delegation today is Mr. Dave Whitty. Thank you for being with us here today. If you want to come up to the podium for your presentation. Thank you.
Is there a time limit?
And our delegations today are 5 minutes. Is that correct?
Yep, ready to go. Thank you. On behalf of our group, thank you for finding time to hear our thoughts concerning our proposal to explore and deliver non-market housing in Nanaimo. These are challenging times for local government. The downloading of many services and issues is troubling. Yet, there are emerging opportunities to address at least one of those challenges, and that is affordable housing. You've heard me talk about homelessness. It is overwhelming in its complexity. As a result of my work and discussions with my government and university contacts in Switzerland, and here with Bob Moss over a few coffees in the vault, it became increasingly apparent that the ultimate fundamental solution to homelessness is ensuring our citizens stay housed. Once forced out of their housing, as Nanaimo point in time count verify, the next steps of sleeping in cars, vans, and tents, and the street often leads to other issues. I cannot do much about those on the street, but I sure can do something about keeping them from entering homelessness. Hence, Housing Nanaimo Working Group. Today, we are here to advocate for integrated housing systems that are showing significant promise in other jurisdictions. It is a fulsome interplay of land, financing, increased housing manufacturing capability, and associated approvals. Levin will discuss that exciting option in more detail, and Bob will close out with his thoughts. I want to talk about the need and opportunity in Nanaimo for a very different delivery of significant numbers of non-market housing. We all know the issue. There is simply not enough non-market housing being built in Nanaimo to house lower income households. Those households earning less than $35,000 per year. And in 2021, that was 8,000 households in Nanaimo, 8,000 households. We call them the precariously housed. Some of them are next up to be on the street. We know that, the point in time count talks about that. There is also the missing middle, those households earning between $35K and $60K per year. That group tends to fall between the cracks. To remind you, and is noted in the 2024 Interim Housing Needs Report, that's 3,355 new non-market rental units needed by 2031. While the city is meeting its new market housing needs and doing a great job of that, it is falling seriously behind in its non-market housing numbers. That has very serious implications on the precariously housed, who are significant contributors to homelessness, on the missing middle, young families starting out, seniors, youth, and service workers who must live with others to survive if they can. On Nanaimo's employers, who state that the cost of housing is preventing their hiring of employees. That has potential significance for Nanaimo's future economic development. The Housing Nanaimo Working Group came together purposefully to address those three implications of lack of affordable housing. Our focus is threefold: keep our fellow citizens housed, provide non-market housing in numbers that address low income and missing middle needs, and thirdly, ensure there is appropriate housing for our workforce. Housing Nanaimo Working Group saw a critical need and self-formed to explore new ways of addressing our shortfall in non-market housing. That work led to us, to you today, here now. Our partnership with NPC and Anchor. We self-selected into this new model, a model that offers a new way of delivering non-market housing. Look at Housing Nanaimo Working Group. We are 18 in number, a mix of seasoned veterans in housing delivery and life experiences, young professionals in finance and marketing, members in real estate, Nanaimo Foundation, United Way, and other organizations delivering frontline services in housing and other supports. We know a good thing when we see it. That is the proposed process of a housing action lab, which will promote deep discourse and understanding of needs and solutions through involvement of a broad section of community interests and input, coupled with new financing models, construction methods, and city involvement. We are in a special time that requires special responses. Housing is central to community well-being and prosperity. Our ask speaks to this time, this need, and that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the delegation at this time? Councillor Gesselbrecht?
I do have some questions.
May I say, I thought we were going to do questions at the end. That's why I stepped back.
Okay, yeah, I could ask questions because it would be both. It would be to the whole collective, so from everybody. So
Understood.
wait, yeah,
We're kind of a team presenting, so we thought
Great.
after Bob finishes.
Absolutely.
He's our cleanup hitter.
So that
Thank
said, I will invite
you.
Levin Hallowert to the mic for the next delegation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be welcomed in another space this time. I think last time we met was May 11th, and I had some consecutive meetings in between, also coming over to Nanaimo from Bowen. And I went back after May 11th with a challenge from the mayor as well, indicating I will vote for this motion because we need something that is innovative. But I don't believe in fairy tales anymore. So you got me on that one. And I want to show my respect of that honesty that was there, because I believe we are really trapped in between these two things. And so we tried to go through that fairy tale also in between these 2 months. We had 2 months in between to see, okay, where are we? Where is Nanaimo? And also for us, where is Nanaimo and what could we bring to the table? We've been doing some things together with NPC, the Housing Working Group, ourselves also as a network. And the first one that we also promised was to research if we bring other methods of construction to the table. Can we drive the price down if you want to have affordable housing and workforce housing? And we established that with one organization that is BC bound also, IBG, one of our partners. And that brought us already with a 25% of reduction in cost for housing. And that's not the price point we need for affordable housing for Nanaimo. We need to go farther down. We did the second thing. We also looked together with the city. That's also what we promised there. We need land. If Nanaimo wants to have affordable housing, we need to have land in the bank. The city brought forward land, but it's not suitable land you have to really build affordably yet. The luck was to work with NPC and the housing group that we could identify other lots. So there's the potential. And there was the proof of concept also, we need to approach this differently. If you're going to build upon the resources of the city alone, it's doomed for failure. Not because of the city, but because you cannot expect a city to solve this alone. So that's the second thing we did. The third one that we also promised, and that's together with John, who we also met online, is that we've been looking into the financing part. And 1% of a lower cost in capital will lower down the price much more than even any building construction technology. There's 3 of the credit unions we work with that are open to start creating a green bond. A green bond would bring a capital that is about 1.5% to 2% lower than CMHC. So that would bring us very, very close to start realizing what we promised. Now comes the report, and Dale, thank you so much for working on this together. It was a kind of inconvenient truth to see the reality, because governance-wise and also procurement-wise, we thought we settled that down in the way we collaborated on bringing in also enough capital now to kick it off. That's not the case. That's what we concluded. But there's the case and the possibility to kick off with the 75K. And so having reflected also together with NPC and with the housing working group between Friday, because that's the moment the report came out, and now, is that we think both options that are formulated in the report are crucial. The signal you're going to give by saying no to anything to the community is not the signal you want. The signal by saying yes to something that is not possible is not a signal you can give. And apparently it's not what we are ready for yet. And I also realize in the time between, it needs time to build trust together. So our proposal would be, is there a way to say yes to the 75K, to do option 2 together as a collective? I have a huge respect of having worked with Bob, with Dave, with Keith, and other members of the working housing group, working from a voluntary basis in a community to bring these things down to the ground is risky. From the moment you stick your neck out, you can be killed. And that's in every community. That's in our small community of 4,000. That's especially true in the community of 100,000. So this needs a structure in order to be safe together. So what we propose for this 75K is that we do 4 things in the upcoming 3 to 4 months. That's 1, we're gonna formalize and structure with a mandate that collective that you've been asking for, together with the city. With the city as a member. That's also what was in the report, and that's also what we brought forward in May 11th. That's 1. Second to that, we want to formalize how these 400 units can go down to the ground. We want to make it practical. So it's not about talking, it's absolutely not about the report. The huge risk of 75K is that we keep on talking and produce paper. So that's why I want to propose the third thing as well, is let's work together with city staff on a procurement for the 300K RFP, which can be for whoever is the best one placed for that. As we also proposed in May, the 300K is a seed fund. The 300K is not for us or for the collective to do the work, no. That's also for us to augment the budget to make these houses being built. And the first 400 houses is $200 million. So we're talking 300,000 towards a $200 million investment here that we need. So there's something wrong in that comparison. But so that's also the fourth point. It cannot only be city money. That's been also what we proposed at May 11. We want to have the space to bring additional budget to the table with other funders and other parties. And if you've been looking also at what's happening for the moment at BC level or at federal level, there's a lot of appetite to step into housing. But they want a strong voice. They want something that is ready to receive the money. Now saying no to it will not make this any candidate for any support from that. That's the risk we run. Waiting until after the elections is also a big risk because you have to start all over again. So that's my big call. There's no sales pitch whatsoever. We get more than enough time and work to do in other places. But there's something ready here. And let's do triple start, or how do you call it, triple jump. Let's do this 75K to go to an RFP, to go launching these 400 units. So that's my words.
Thank you. I did see hands from Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Gesselbrecht. It's still for after. Okay, and Mr. Bob Moss is zooming in.
I think he's virtual chair, so just one moment.
How's that? Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Chair and members of Council, for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this fun issue. Together with my two colleagues, we would like to propose the following path forward. First of all, let's be brave for the benefit of our fellow citizens and for our economy. By being brave, let's make the SpaceX of non-market housing for Nanaimo. Not to build reusable rockets to substantially reduce the cost of space missions, but rather to build reusable homes to substantially reduce the cost of housing. Yes, there are some risks associated with establishing Nanaimo Housing Action Lab and the collective, but the potential results could be a huge win for Nanaimo and our fellow citizens. Not only would we deliver 300 to 400 new homes in short order, but more importantly, we would develop systems, processes, and contacts that would enable us to efficiently deliver many hundreds more. This is not a study, it's an action plan. I've had the opportunity over the last 3 months to wrap my mind around the collective, which of course includes Nanaimo Working Group, Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation, City of Nanaimo, and the Anchor team. I've also had the opportunity to get to know the Anchor team more thoroughly and learn about their experience and their contacts. So again, with my colleagues, together we strongly support this initiative and recommend that Council firstly support and move forward with Mr. Lindsay's option 1 as quickly as possible. But secondly, work together with the collective and city staff to find a creative way to fund the remaining $225,000 over the next few months. So I'll keep my comments short, but the three of us are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. So I will go to Councillor Gesselbrecht for the first question.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, I think that my question was answered sort of in the final statements from Mr. Moss there. And so clarity, how a potential pathway forward could be is looking at, starting with the work in that first tranche with 75K, that would go to the NPC, work with Anchor and the community housing collect. I got getting mixed up on the thing there. The housing working group, and that would work on those first phases. Start to really flesh out, identify land, flesh out the reality of what it would take to put that 400 units in the ground, and begin that discussion on what a framework would be that could provide that living lab and that organizational structure to be able to scale this up and own, and what it would look like to who would manage and own the housing basically. And then also with city look to collaboratively develop that RFP for the next step of funding to carry that project further forward. Is that clear? Okay, yeah. Great, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
2 questions, if I may. Are you aware of the Attainable Homes program in Calgary?
I'm not.
It's an extremely well-used program, and it's very similar to what you're saying.
Can I? There are actually a number of programs across the country and internationally that we're following. Lots of models out there, and when you get retired, You get to explore that stuff, and LinkedIn's filled with it. Integrated systems is front and center for all of the emerging successful affordable housing delivering models.
Yeah, I was just,
And Calgary's doing some really good work.
yeah, because it's amazing, because you only need $2,000 to get into a house, you know, and then the difference there is that once you decide to sell, they give you the same amount that you paid for it, so you've still saved up for your next one. It's a really good program. So that was just one thing I wanted to bring up. It did come up at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as a way to look at. One of the other questions I had, is there a way to work with the private developers to get them to become involved, since land is going to be an issue, that they would be willing to help with this project?
The whole aim why we also want to build a collective is to exactly bring them in. So why we are a starting group, but the developers and local employment is key. And that's also what we had the discussions with the board of NPC, is this is also about employment and economics. So the more you can do locally with the people, the better. So that's also the aim.
And then my last question is, if these are going to be rentals, who does the management? Would it be the Municipal Housing Authority?
It was an interesting point addressed also by Mr. Lindsay's report, also mentioning, should we have a city action lab? Definitely. Should we have a structure within the city? Definitely. But you will always need, the city alone cannot solve these things. So you need to be organized in the best way possible, but it needs two to tango. So who's going to manage that was exactly why we cannot figure that out yet, but we need to find that structure. So goal number one was even create a governance structure around the Housing Action Lab with the results of the first phase. That still sticks. So in fact, we really still want to hold strong to that. But the way the city organizes itself and the way it's part of a broader Housing Action Lab are two different things. And they are complementary to the report as well.
Okay, thank you, because that'll be a concern I'll have later following what's going on in Toronto, where they don't have the money to maintain. So thanks.
It's certainly a really good question. And that's the whole purpose of collectively exploring and not prejudging solutions until we've heard all the voices. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. Mr. Moss, you talked about reusable homes. Did I hear that term right?
Yes, you did, but I was kind of having a play on words with the SpaceX thing. But yes, I mean, likely we're talking about rental housing. So yes, that would be reusable.
Reusable, okay. I just wasn't sure if there was something else that you were thinking of. Anyway, I'll come back to that. And my other question—
No, it doesn't go beyond that.
Doesn't go beyond that, okay. So the 75,000, my second question is, the 75,000 would be, and I just didn't hear everything about the, to formalize all of those. I love your accent. I want you to keep on talking, but occasionally I miss a word or two in the sentence. So I'm just wondering if you could just go over there were 4 points that you mentioned. And if anybody else wants to talk to that about the formalizing of the 75,000, how it would be used, because that's obviously the concern for us today is, you know, obviously given the report, we can't just give out 300,000, but the 75,000 might be an excellent start to get us on the right track to get to a possible RFP stage in the future. So I'm just wondering if you could just go through that again for me.
Let's acknowledge we only know the 75,000 is the only thing that is possible now since Friday. And we worked hard on that also together with Mr. Lindsay to see, okay, what is possible then? And we could have two responses to that, like, forget it, it's not going to work. Or what do we really need to kick off? So the intention we have and what we discussed together with the three partners is let's kick off with first forming the collective.
Gotcha.
So that there's a real group emerging so that we can start building on your points. Because then it's real. And having that mandate will be a significant thing also for the community. The second one, we've been doing our research in what is possible. Let's nail down these first solutions to show and demonstrate what is possible now so that we can start kicking off the 400 units and secure if there's other budgets available or coming in that we know what we're going to do with that.
Okay.
The two other points is regarding the funding. 75,000 is almost nothing to start it off with such a big ambition. So
exactly.
The 75,000 is what we sensed also together with working with the city and with staff. Let's use that money to build a proper form of RFP, that's option 2, so that we are not working in isolation, but demonstrate collaboration there.
Okay.
And the other one, it's never been the intention that the city pays for this alone. So the fourth one is, can we also identify 1 or 2 co-funders for this so that we can kick it off faster? That's the 4 goals.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask another very quick question? So it would be that, so going through the Prosperity Corporation, that would be the organization that's leading this, is that correct?
They offered us to host the whole collective because of their innovation role, because of the way they are organized.
Okay.
We discussed that in the preparation towards May 11th.
Okay.
We also presumed this would have been the way to host the 300K as well. Apparently, that's now showing up that it's not the case, that it's not possible for now. So we need to re-evaluate and reassess that.
Gotcha.
But the money is not the most important thing. NPC demonstrates the fact that they can hold that. So that would be, they would be the host for the initiative. That's
Okay.
true.
Well, the potential of this is very inspiring, so thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to go to Councillor Brown and then Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to the 3 of you for your presentation, and also wasn't able to attend the last one, but I appreciated being able to watch that in video, and thank you for the effort there as well. I must admit, I'm having a little trouble understanding what actually is being proposed. And I'll just kind of frame it, and hopefully you can kind of parse out the question. If someone came in tomorrow with an alternative form of a building solution, engineered, the building code and the building inspection process makes provisions for that to happen. So that's something that could happen fairly quickly. And yes, there could, I could always say there could be some effectiveness realized in the permitting process, but the systems itself already exist to accommodate such a proposal. If there is alternative financial models, my question would be, why aren't they funding? Why aren't they in existence and currently funding housing projects? So like, what needs to happen to make a fundamentally different financial product? And then the second question is, or the third element of it is really, if it's a governance model of like a housing corp, and I would strongly suggest that I would have been happily if we had a housing corp 7-8 years ago, but we could do that tomorrow. So what I'm trying to understand is we've got if all those 2 out of those 3 are already possible, I take you on your word, there's a potential for a third one. What kind of lab do we need? Why can't we just go do the thing itself and get to a housing corp, governance structure, new financial models that can absorb any new building solutions or traditional construction? Thank you.
Yeah, and a good question. There's and again, one of the things you can do when you're retired is dig deep in some of this stuff. The reality is that one-offs don't work in housing. We've had one-offs happening for a number of years. There's all kinds of evidence that what we need is what is called an integrated housing system. And it just sounds like a bunch of words, but it is the reality of doing something different. Thank God we don't build cars the way we build houses, because we would have all walked here today. Because housing is as complicated thing as anything we have. And I use this many times, that the most innovative thing we've done in housing, single-family housing, in the last 40 years is develop the pneumatic hammer. And pretty well that's it. We're failing society because we are not standing back and saying what we're doing now isn't working. We need a new way of addressing this. We need a new model, plain and simple. We don't need to talk to people over here who have funding. No, maybe they'll help us. Oh, well, yeah, maybe we'll get, and there are now manufactured prefab housing, and in a lot of places in Sweden, half of their single-family housing is now manufactured housing. 85% of their multifamily housing is now manufactured housing. But what they're also doing is integrating that for affordable housing and non-market housing around government intervention and funding models. So the reality is, Councillor Brown, yeah, there are these one-offs out there, but if we continue to explore one-offs, we won't build the 3,000 plus homes we need by 2031. It ain't happening because it's not happening now. And the big question, I think, on the table is, what do we have to do to change the model? We're providing the answer. And this isn't just us. This is out there now. Nanaimo won't be leading this. We'll be following. That's a good thing. But there's all kinds of evidence in places that are into integrated systems housing. And the internet, it's all the talk now. It's all the talk. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, I'm seeking a little clarity. My question is really essentially this. Why wouldn't we just create, instead of spending $300,000 bringing people together, why wouldn't we just spend, I imagine it's going to take a few $100,000, but a similar amount of money establishing a housing corporation and doing any of the work that the housing lab would do, but now having the entity to proceed with construction. That's what I'm not understanding with the proposal. Why take that middle step?
To whom do you ask the question?
To the three of you.
I think that's the second question from your first one. Why doesn't it happen yet? All the puzzle pieces are there. So like what Councillor Armstrong said about the example of Calgary, I'm really hopeful. There's so many good initiatives happening. But now we always think a structure will be the answer. And then a corporation will be the answer. It's also what happens now in between now and the last 2 weeks. It's not about the technical solutions. It's about the amount you can trust each other to start building these things. It's the soft skill in between. So now establishing a housing corporation with only the city brings all of the responsibility on the shoulders of the city for an issue they cannot solve alone. And that's not going into our brains. So this is really not about making it more harder. It's creating a fit for purpose and a structure. So could the corporation, a housing corporation, be a good solution? Absolutely. But we don't want to create a report. I really want to stress out, we want to bring tangible, implementable proposals here on lands. Once we know how they work and function, then building a housing corporation could be the best possible way. But there's as many forms as there's municipalities and cities right now. So you need to find the form that fits the needs you have in Nanaimo. So it's too early to now say a housing corporation is the right answer. You don't know that yet. We need to invent that together. And that doesn't have to take long, but you need to find, okay, wow, now we know that we can accelerate in creating volume of housing. Now we know how to structure that, then you can structure it. But first structuring it and already narrowing down the way you can build it out, it's too early. And we had that whole discussion for the last 5 months, so it's a very tough one. But the question is, how do you build stability and how do you build trust? Is it through structure or through relationships? And it's both. But relationships around purpose and around real action comes first, and then the structure follows and not the other way around. So that's quite a straightforward answer, but I hope it answers your needs.
And if I may say, I advocated for a development corp, I don't know, a long time ago. And then, and we haven't done that. And here we sit and we're further in need of housing. I think that if you were to ask me, well, you can ask me now, I think that a housing corp might be the answer, but based on what I see now, and it might more likely have been the answer 10 years ago, but things are emerging, maybe not the answer. And we agree with Levin that we need to explore these, that the Housing Action Lab is the place to do that. It's a place where we bring interests together and build common purpose. That kind of structure is, I think, the way to go. And there's a whole emerging thing around that whole regional coordination too. There's a presentation the other day I saw that related to housing. So there's a whole bunch of need to kind of collaborate and come together. And that's really what this is about.
Thank you.
Councillor Manley.
Thank you. I have heard questions about this, and Mr. Moss might be able to answer. I'm not sure if you're still a board member of Bolinas, but I'm just curious, and I've heard this question asked, why wouldn't an existing nonprofit housing organization just be using this model and moving forward in this way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the answer to that is, while the nonprofits, including Bolinas, that are out there are trying to make a difference, the reality is we aren't able to deliver fast enough. And so we need to explore ways of changing that. And I believe, and Bolinas, as you may know, is part of the Housing Nanaimo Working Group. We believe that this is a way to try and find a more creative solution to move forward.
So a partnership model and different levels of expertise in different areas coming together to work on this is?
Absolutely, and the partnership model is really key to the whole structure, as Lieven has been mentioning. And it may well be that organizations like Bolinas contribute the management portion for a while, or maybe even some capital, but it will just be a portion of a bigger solution.
One of the conversations I had after the last meeting was with the executive director of the Nanaimo Foundation, and just talking about affordable housing. There's a lot of business leaders in the community who want to see more affordable workforce housing, and the potential, not just through credit unions, but maybe through philanthropists, to lend money at a lower rate, to see some action happen. Has that been explored at all? Like, has there been that kind of outreach in the community with?
Well, yeah, again, not yet. That's what we want to do. I mean, we're tempted. I mean, we're going to be doing. We need council support to do this right, but some of us are going to do what we need to do. I just and do that kind of outreach. There are those I sit on the foundation. There are those opportunities. Our foundation doesn't have the same amount in the bank as some others, but clearly the Vancouver Foundation is exploring this as a topic. It's on front and center for most foundations in the country, and that comes out of the conversations out of the housing lab.
And I guess one of the objectives is to be less dependent on funding sources from senior levels of government, and having more of a diverse portfolio of options.
Going back to the Calgary example, once you have your financial model figured out locally, the money will follow. And that's also what was in the current report. Also, what do we want to do for the 300K? Building that operating model is key. And then you're going to have a hybrid of whether it's slow capital, patient capital, philanthropy capital, whatever, but you need to have your financial model in place first. And that's also answering to the need of, maybe do we need a housing corporation? Well, mostly capital will define how you will structure it. They have their requirements. And that's also it's great to have a structure, but it will have to follow what you build. And if we are lucky and we know the 2,000 next units that are going to go up, that's close to $1 billion. Well, that billion will want to have a vote, and also a voice in how we're going to structure that. And the we is then the collective. So that's where you have to balance it out. But you need a financial model to know, okay, what is it? Is it your rental rate you want to get fixed? And then you're going to build around it, and then you can play. But then everybody can step in at his place or her place.
And so what you're asking for is a hybrid motion, $75,000 to get you started, and an RFP for the balance. Is that correct?
Well, I think most importantly, let's not waste time. Let's really bring action to the table. That's what we ask for. Okay. And now it's the 75K because that's what's possible. We would have preferred the 300K to really accelerate and bring more strength into the room, but that's what we have right now. So let's use what's at the table and honor also and acknowledge what came out of the staff report.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe, and then Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you, if I may. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I certainly appreciate your thoughts, and I have a great respect for you. Having said that, need to express some thoughts of my own and some concerns, and maybe you can address them. First of all, it seems to me that today's proposal has changed since last Friday. And what we're focused on today is 75,000 instead of 350,000 or whatever. So to me, that's a shift in thinking and a shift in approach. And I'm seeing you shake your head. So you can respond to me in just a moment. But first of all, when things shift like that, I personally need time to give them some thought. And I heard you say, Mr. Calawart, that the 75,000 would start action and you would use it to get talking and brainstorming and so on. But it seems to me that further down the road, whatever that talking produced would still result and come up against the concerns and the restrictions that staff have pointed out in their report regarding procurement and trade policies and so on. 75,000 is still a large amount of money to sole source. And we can say it quickly, but it's still a large amount of money to justify for that. And I guess I'm wondering why we couldn't do this talking and brainstorming without using money to form a formal collective. Couldn't we simply invite people to a table and have discussions coordinated by staff or the Prosperity Corporation or whoever, and start to have those conversations in a less formal, less expensive way? And I would also point out that the city funded the Systems Planning Corporation. And quite frankly, that was a disappointment in my opinion. And we sank some money into that and eventually had to discontinue that program. So I guess I'm leery about something which appears somewhat similar. And I would ask you, how is this different? And how would you reply to my comments? I'm not sure I had a direct question in there, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and $75,000 is $75,000 out of a city budget. So as a councillor, you should be, understand why you are concerned and raise the question. Last part of your question, SPO, very structured very differently, and ambitions were different. And I don't think there's any surprise. I wasn't a great fan of that. I said so publicly, so I'm saying so again. And so I'm not surprised that it ended up where it ended up. This is not going to end up where it's... I'm at the table here. Bob Moss is at the table. Keith Wilson's at the table. We don't do this lightly. We don't commit ourselves to ideas that don't have merit. This is very, very different. This idea has merit. In terms of hey, that they're changed because they wanted 300, now 75 seems to be enough. It's not enough to do what is needed to do at the end of the day, but where you are hamstrung in terms of the 300K from a legal perspective. And what we're saying is, we could walk away. Like we could have said, no, we can't do it, forget it, we'll do something else. This is too important, and Bob will jump in, I'm sure, I know he will. This is too important for us. That's why we're saying, okay, this isn't a great way to try and solve this, but we can make that 75 work to open some doors here to leverage potential other money, and we want to take that opportunity to do that and explore and have the conversations necessary to get the energy to get this started. I'm flummoxed to think about that the opportunity to fund $75,000 for something that can deliver potentially a huge benefit to this city. I find that very challenging personally. But at the end of the day, you have to make that decision. I think life for me is largely built on trust. And councillors, I don't expect you to make a decision based on trust very often, but I think you have to today.
And if I could wade in just quickly on this one, Councillor Thorpe, I understand your concern, but the reality is we are still asking for $300,000. We're just trying to figure out the way to get the remaining 225 in a collaborate way with working with city staff. And these funds are essentially to pay for services that we will require in order to put the pieces together. And I don't think we need to review this with you, but essentially what's happening right now is not working. We're not delivering the housing that we need. So this is a new experiment. I think we all understand that it's an experiment, but I think it's, in my view anyway, it's one that's got some great potential. And the $300,000 won't be wasted. It will be spent putting together the plan, and it will require some professional advice and some assistance for that, and that's where those funds will be dispersed. So I think it's, the ask hasn't changed. We're just looking for a way to reconfigure it so that it can be done and that we can get going now, because the sooner we can get started, the sooner we can deliver results.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moss. If I may, Chair, just a final thought then. To Dr. Whitty, yes, trust is very important, and I might personally have great trust in you and your colleagues, but my role is also based on good governance, and I have to be very careful of how I place that trust and make those decisions. And second, thanks, Mr. Moss, but and I know the intentions of this are very good, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but I'm also hearing you say at the same time that we're presupposing that the $75,000 will kick off and lead to the 300,000 need or request. You're sort of presupposing that, yes, you will come back and continue with your planning. And so I go back to my earlier question of, aren't we going to come up against the same restrictions that staff have pointed out and be back to square one?
Well, I think there's got to be a creative way around this. And I would suggest that if we continue to work together with staff, we can find that way. And maybe it is a request for proposal situation, but let's keep chatting about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, gentlemen. Fairly specific question. As Anchor worked with Modular Housing BC, Paul Benotto?
Yes, and as we said also in May 11th, so IBG is one of our partners. So it's also the ones that helped us out to see how can we drive the price down. So they won their awards. They're in the midst of modular, non-modular, because it's more panels they also make, in order to drive costs down. That's also what we need to look for. So we are familiar with that. We are working together with them, and that's very important. That's also what we stated at May 11th. It's building that capacity to bring these in. Once there's enough volume we can demonstrate, there's a big support possible also even from the province to see how we can change regulations there. And modular is just one form. It's one building methodology. So we are not stick into one at all. It needs to work, and it needs to prove price, quality, and also speed in order to deliver. But we're working with them as well. Yeah. And that's so Jay Mather, that's my colleague that was in one of the meetings also. He's leading the whole part on the building technologies.
And if I may, Chair, thank you. I will tell all of you that I'm remembering those lines of George Schultz at the Iran-Contra hearings, trust, it's the coin of the realm. And so I have great faith in the individuals involved, who I've known for a very long time. But I too, like Councillor Thorpe, have to consider trust, but 75,000 is 75,000. So I look forward to the discussion following this. Thank you.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, if I might, for staff or for our guests who are here. And I know that Mr. Lindsay is on the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation. So would the Prosperity Corporation be actually managing this initiative, or would it be strictly the inner group that we're seeing here today? I'm just wondering who would be in control and watching over, how the money is spent, when more is needed, that sort of thing. I'm just wondering that process.
Well, the CEO of the Prosperity Corporation is behind us.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when they're sitting here, we proposed a governance structure also in the proposal, May
Yeah.
11th. So page 3.
Yeah.
And that's to create a board there of 2 representatives of the NPC, 2 of the city, 2 of the housing working group, and 2 of Anchor in order to provide that. That is also evolving. Like having 8 to the table, it might be very good to have an external or an objective 9th board member there in order to take decisions. But there needs to be good governance for the money, but it's not only about the money of the city. I want to stress out, we don't want to build on the money of the city alone. This needs to be something that builds value and that we can build these houses.
Yeah.
So that's the way we propose to build the governance. That will be concluded with the first meeting we're going to have if city steps in with the different members there. That's also the starting group, not the end group. So there's other parties that need to come to the table. That's why we want to start this action lab and these sprints. So the governance structure is a big part of finding that out by doing it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. If I might, I'd like to move option number 1.
Just Chair, if you're done with questions for the delegations, they should have a seat first before you discuss any motions.
Thank you so much for your delegations and for answering our questions today.
Thank you. Thanks.
If I could move option number 1, if I get it seconded, I could speak to it.
I see it seconded by Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Chair. The issue for me was when we stopped the SPO, it felt a little like we were just leaving this out there to try to come to some better decisions. And this for me is, I think, a better decision. And goodness knows we have to do something to get this up and running again and get it. And when I say again, I mean what we had hoped to have done by the SPO, which wasn't done. I'm hoping that this, through the work of the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation, with them behind it, watching it and guiding it to get it up and going, I think is very important. And I see this initiative as the beginning of probably the next 15 years worth of work. But if it brings homes to those who cannot pay the current market rates, that's just such a move in the right direction. And I do believe there are initiatives that we just don't even know yet. But we need to have some people looking into this to try to come to the best solutions. And for me, I really appreciate Councillor Thorpe and Mayor Krog's concerns about the $75,000. I think that's an important concern. But it's the best deal that we can get at this point, and I'm fully prepared to support that. Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Thanks. I appreciate the discussion. Trying to, we received the report on Friday with the outline that we can't, do sole source of 300,000, and just trying to piece together what the best process and steps forward are. And I think it's clear, one, there's a huge need in terms of being able to provide non-market housing in the community. And I think that's everybody's unanimously in agreement with. And that we are going to have to innovate to figure out how to do that, because we currently don't have the resources, knowledge, capacity to go about and do that. And so we have to do something and take some action. What the best step forward is I think there's 1,000 different ways of doing the first step. And I don't think any will work if the mentality isn't from the outset, we are actively creating the plane that we need to fly, and everybody has to bring their ability in a collaborative manner to figure out how to make it work. And I think there's a general fear of over-investing in something that's not going to work. The SPO, there was a lot of disappointment in that. We created a structure. We invested a lot of time in strategies and plans. We put something forward. We invested a lot of time in recruiting. Then it got up and running. The objectives weren't fully clear, and it floundered. there was a lot of good things that came out of the experience of people working on projects and the communication and identifying where the pinch points were. But I think that there is a tentativeness and a worry to overinvest in something and it produce nothing. Now even at 75K, we're like, well, what's gonna be accomplished for 75K? And I'm always leery of not having very clear objectives of what the investment is going to achieve so that everybody who's collaborating can focus on direct outcomes. And I think now, there's been a bit of a change in what the goalposts are because of the restrictions on our procurement. So now if we go ahead with the 75K, what are the outcomes? I think one important thing is getting people to the table, continue getting people to the table to collaborate and discuss very concretely, what is a pilot that we can actually get units in the ground? How are we going to pull in that funding, the alternative financing? How are we going to pull in the building innovation to drop the price down? And also, more importantly, where is this land going to come from? Even for that first 400 units, those are critical things that we need to figure out. We also need to figure out what is this ongoing organizational structure going to be that's going to be able to scale the provision of housing and go forward, be it a housing corporation, be it whatever different options there are around that. And I take Councillor Brown's points to heart about why don't we just do the housing corporation and get on with it. We had the option to go do that, but there's a tentativeness to invest in an organizational structure that may produce nothing. And so it's trying to find that balance of, can we work on something tangible and in that process create the organization around it that will continue to produce based on success. And that's why this idea of a pilot came to fruition, is that let's focus on a pilot, get people collaborating. We'll know who the people are able to collaborate or not to make this pilot successful. If it's not successful, we know, well, that's a tree that we can't bark up on. And so if this initial investment 75 says, okay, we're in, we need to make it work, and everybody's going to work together to figure out what the next step is to scale it, whether it's make this RFP that can take the next steps of the process. There are things that we have to do. We need to assess what land's available. We need to go through what are the different organizational structures. We need to be able to figure out what building innovators and contractors and developers and financiers are available to actually make progress. These are all things that take somebody doing the actual work, and that costs money, be it a staff person, be an external contractor. So we need to start somewhere with something. If we give the 75K to the NPC and then we as a city walk away and it's like, well, this is their problem and let's see how successful they'll be, it's not going to be successful. That's what can happen when we give externally and then say, well, this is what they wanted, this is what they asked for. I don't think anything's going to be successful unless the city is 100% at the table, actively collaborating on making it work. I'm also a little leery of presupposing what the outcome would be. Like if we do the 75K and Anchor's at the table, it's like Anchor brings with it its ideas of how things will work. I don't want to paint ourselves into a corner if that's not the way that the community wants to go, and because we've sole sourced. And so this procurement idea is something that's important, but I want to make sure that this initial 75K, we're agnostic to what the actual organizational structure and the way that we're going to divide up how this is going to be financed and all that, but that we go in with a collaborative mind. And really this is to pay for facilitation, to bring the groups together, to bring together the expertise of how to actually build these structures, to bring the expertise of the financing in place, and just do that first initial step that brings people together to discuss. That ultimately is going to have to lead to that second stage of an RFP to build out the rest of the project, which is going to take money to actually coordinate and bring things together. And so that is an outcome, is that from this initial 75K, we want to collaboratively build an RFP for the next stages of it. And I'm not 100% clear. There's things that need to be done, but I'm actually not 100% clear of what are all the steps along this pathway that need to be accomplished. They're outlined a bit in the Collier's report, in the proposal that was put before by Anchor initially, of all the things that we need to do. But some things may happen first, or different stages. It is unclear, and that's what collaboratively needs to be decided with all people at the table. So I apologize for the ramble, but I'm in support of this if it is seen as the first step to actually like take direct action and do something. And in with that 75, that we are all in agreement of clear outcomes. And right now it's not 100% clear what are the outcomes of the 75K. Levin articulated a little bit of it, but we need to make sure that we're clear-eyed going in and that it leads to that next step. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Brown and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. First, I just have a comment on the SPO. The SPO was born out of the Health and Housing Task Force with a very particular purpose. When that initial report was produced, there was a lot of talk about how it would make sense to do that work within the city itself. But those at the table and those in the general community were pushing for it to be outside of the city because of the conversations around relationships. So it morphed a little bit against from the original recommendations. And then I also think that the organization itself morphed because it just kind of lost its reason for existence because those in the community that were really asking for it also didn't buy into it in the end. And so I think it's really great tragedy that's not just the fault of the SPO or not the fault of the city for choosing to fund it. There's a lot of factors there, and it's unfortunate. So I'm no defender of the SPO, but I think it's really important we get our facts right. And it was around housing coordination, not around housing delivery. So building off that, I really appreciate and have continued to appreciate Councillor Gesselbrock's approach and motivation here to try to find housing solutions, especially in the more affordable and subsidized realm, both from the time on the SPO and the pivot there, but also continuing the conversations following that. I do want to support this, but I'm having a hard time understanding what role it actually fills. Because I hear the comments that we don't want to presuppose an outcome, not necessarily a housing corp. But then we also say, but in order for it to be successful, the city has to be a player. And I agree from approvals, but also I think the conversation is around providing land. And in order for the city to provide land, but also have an organization that can work with businesses and outside capital, it only really leads to one place, and that is a housing corporation, a housing authority, a development corporation. At the end of the day, they're all their intention may differ slightly, but their structure is fundamentally the same, and that's to get all the benefits of working with a municipality and how they can turn over certain types of assets or certain type of programming to a entity that can also take on external relationships that city can't, can provide support to businesses and work for not-for-profits in ways that cities can't. And most importantly, work with other forms of institutional investors or capital providers. So to me, to suggest that $300,000 it's important to have that conversation to build trust. Well, we did spend that for around the Health and Housing Action Plan, and that one data point didn't produce a better outcome. And there's, with respect to all the individuals involved, I very much trusted all of them as well. And so that is why I'm really struggling with this decision, because it has yet to be presented to me or illuminated to me that what does this actually provide to advance the delivery of affordable or subsidized housing within the community that we couldn't achieve with the tools that we already have. And to me, what is missing in that is just council's intention to say, no, we're doing this, and commit to that. So in absence of that, I think, it's easy to throw 75K. It's even easy to throw 300K and think that we're doing something. But the conversations aren't going to build housing, and no one has been able to tell me, and I appreciate the efforts and the energy that have gone into this, but I have yet to hear an argument about what this actually does and how it will move the needle. And I don't think it's fair for 300K to say, but the conversation is going to lead to that, because it might not. So I won't be supporting this as on the floor. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. A question through you to staff. please. There's nothing really from preventing us from actually putting this out to an expression of interest to see if there are others. I grant, I do take it that the fact that this is the first group that's come forward, but maybe there's others. I really struggle when we try and change something originally from 300,000 now to do a sole servant or sole whatever. To help out people that we know and respect. I really struggle with that. I think that's problematic for me when originally our intent was the 300,000. So for me, I would like to see if we're going to do it. Just put out an expression of interest for that $300,000 and see who applies and then go from there. That's my one point. My second point is I did a lot of research into the Edmonton program as well as the Calgary program. And of note, the Calgary program, which is going to only supply 1,200 homes, is $72 million. So we're talking a lot of money, and it was the same in Edmonton, and it's also cheaper to build there. So these are things that I look at, and when we do talk about it, as Councillor Brown said, the $75,000, yes, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it can be used for other things as well. So I really like the initiative on this. I think we need to look at it, but I'm really struggling as well as to see what will we get, where will we go, and I'll just wait to hear other comments before I make up my final decision. But back over to staff. Sorry, I forgot to let you answer.
Thank you. Through the chair. So I think the question was, what could we just go out to go to procurement? And that is option 2 in the report. That is the second option. Okay. It would be very much the city taking on that process, but if it is something council wanted to do, and the pros and cons are outlined in the report. I would also just, while I have the microphone, make a note that to get the report in front of council in the time that it was asked for, I think some of the recommendations are not fully fleshed out. So the first one is support in principle, the $75,000. And it's really subject going back and completing the conversations with the partners and getting a lot of clarity around that first step, including most importantly, getting full support from NPC that they're actually prepared to take on that role. So very much been in the conversations, but approval from the board would be part of that. So that's why it says approval in principle. And again, the options put in front of you were in direct response to your motion, which were options to fund and support the proposal. So that's why they're both looking at ways to move that forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I just misread that. Thanks.
And just for my own clarity, are the motions potentially complementary, or is it a either or situation?
Through the chair to the chair, when I was putting the report together, I wasn't really thinking of being complementary. I think there probably is an avenue where you could start with the 75 and then launch a larger process if that's what is deemed to be necessary. I think we'd have to be careful in that procurement process in terms of now who's eligible or who's not eligible to compete. But I think that's something that, if council supportive in principle of the $75,000 as a starter, that's something I think we'd have to flesh out with the group and have a common understanding about before we went ahead.
Okay. Councillor Manley?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm prepared to support this as is. I think we need to get something started. I was interested in the development corp when we were talking about it a number of years ago, but the response was really tepid and from other councillors, and not something that seemed like it was the option we were going to do. But I think what Nanaimo's doing with Petroglyph Development is actually very brilliant. They're going into a number of different businesses and housing and affordable housing. And if you're going to have affordable housing, you need other ways to pay for it. So having, units where you got commercial on the ground floor and other avenues to cover affordable housing, it's a smart way to go. We need workforce housing in this community. We talk about economic development. We could be attracting companies here, but if you don't have affordable housing, it's difficult. And we talk about attracting healthcare workers to this community, but we don't have places that are affordable for nurses, for healthcare workers. So this is a problem we need to work on solving. The province has directed us to have so many units built of market housing and so many units of affordable housing, and we've hit the marks with market housing, but we have not done anything with affordable housing because we're relying on the province to help us with that. And they haven't been doing a very good job of helping us with getting affordable housing units. So we need to be looking at other solutions. And I think that this is, we've got some smart minds coming to the table here, and business community leaders coming to the table here with a solution to work together. This is a broad coalition of people who have experience in the development community, in the nonprofit community, in the economic sector, with the Nanaimo Foundation, with the cross-section of people we have involved. And I think that it behooves us to support it. So I'm prepared to support this, and then see about taking it out to tender for the bigger picture. But we need to be moving forward on finding affordable workforce housing for people that we want to attract to be working in this community. Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrecht, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. This is a question to staff. Just in terms of having it be a two-part, where it's the initial 75K to start the first phases of what was outlined in the project proposal, but that it'll have to take some work on staff to redesign sort of like what the logical progression would be, but that as a outcome of that 75 would be the creation of an RFP to finish the rest of the work, because like 75K is not going to get anything done of what we need. Like the amount of coordination and work that actually would take to bring these pilots to the table, to go and solicit external funding, to bring the options of different organizational structures. I mean, it would be all very nice if everybody wanted to volunteer around a table and do that work for free. But it will be much more than 75K. So I don't want to be in a situation where we give 75K to go work and then it could turn into just talking and no outcomes and the step. And yeah, so I'm just curious, like, is there a problem of having it be a two-step process where it's like this initial investment and then leading to an RFP?
Through the chair, I think that's one potential outcome. But again, I think it's important if the committee and ultimately council supports the $75,000, that there's further work done to get some clarity on exactly that and understanding what is going to be the deliverables of this first phase, what can be done under the 75K, and is part of that just raising further expectations about coming back. If there's a further procurement, that the city would normally run that process as our procurement policy if we're spending the money. But that is, again, something we'd have to work out and clarify with the partners before everybody signed on to the $75,000.
Okay. And then just with option 2, would that creation of that RFP, just how it's written now, just be solely the city figuring out what it would be and then just putting it out there? Or is that creation in collaboration with other parties to like figure out what actually are the deliverables? Because I think, this idea of just going straight to a housing corp, I mean, ultimately there's work that's going to take to get to that point of like, what is going to be the delivery model? And it'd be all fine now. We just like do a housing corp, get it set up. Like really, this is part of the work that will get us to like, what is that organizational structure that we need, and that those steps need to be in this process. And what it's saying is that not only are we going to figure out what the delivery organizational structure is going to be, but we're also in that process going to look at a pilot that can demonstrate that it is possible to deliver this stuff at an affordable rate and not have a housing corporation and then it be stuck doing nothing or struggling, which other communities could be getting into. So I guess that question, yeah, that wasn't very clear.
Sorry, I'm not sure what the question is, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, I was rambling there. No question. Just thinking out loud.
Good try. It's a very challenging issue, and we're trying to come at it from so many different angles here. So, Councillor Thorpe, you had a question?
Yes, I do, if I may, Chair. I guess my response is, first of all, that yes, I'm sure all around this table support the idea of increased affordable housing and taking action when we can to try and bring that about. Everybody wants that as a goal. I guess my hesitations right now are this. Number one, I'm struggling with why if we're really wanting to go down this path, why would we simply not put out an RFP in the first place, attract expressions of interest, hear what any applicants have to say, and then proceed from there. Because as I indicated earlier, with this route that's currently on the table, we're almost presupposing that we will continue down the path with Anchor in this organization, as well qualified and well-meaning as they may be. But I'm not totally comfortable with that perception of predetermination. And secondly, and I'd like to ask Mr. Lindsay through you, Chair. Mr. Lindsay, you said, you referenced that approving the $75,000 in principle. And at a recent regional district meeting, I expressed that I am never comfortable with that term, supporting in principle, because if I heard you correctly, that would involve getting more clarification about goals and outcomes of this group. And if that was the case, then I would suggest, why don't we get that clarification from the group first, and then we can make a determination whether we want to support it.
Through the chair, and thanks. I think appreciate the opportunity to answer that question, because it's really, as I said earlier, it's ideally we'd come to the table with all of those details in place. It was just the fact that we were working to a predefined schedule. Council said, get it to this meeting. So we're doing that. And out of respect for the partners in the group, I couldn't put forward a recommendation that just said do $75,000, because they're obviously, although we had some quick conversations, not the depth of that's necessary to get clarity around exactly what would this $75,000 do if it's supportable, and exactly what will it deliver, and what further steps can council expect. All of those, I think those discussions need to happen. So in my mind, if council supported that, then that would give us an opportunity to do that. So it's certainly not that the partners weren't willing to have that conversation. It was just the timing and bringing it back to this meeting.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And I think council always needs to be careful about putting a time limit on when reports need to be brought forward, because sometimes more time is needed to get all the necessary background information. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, you have a question?
Yeah, just a little bit of one, I guess, or more of a comment. I think it's something we have to discuss again, and I agree with what Councillor Brown said. Are we going down the road of having a housing corporation? And that's a decision that I think we need to really look at before we even make any decisions on this, because if that's what we're going to do, then let's do it properly. Let's put it out properly, giving staff the amount of time needed to put together a proper proposal, what they think is needed, what they think is required, and then put it out to RFP, and let's create a housing corporation. Like, I'm really struggling with this. Like I said, the sole sourcing has bothered me. I think for me, it doesn't pass the Globe and Mail test, which is, like public looking at it. Oh, you've just changed the rules to accommodate what people would say are our friends. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but that's the Globe and Mail test, right? They're going to look at that because originally we had 300,000 and now, no, we can't do that. So we'll change the number so you can get it. I really struggle with that. And for me, I much preferred option 2, giving staff more time to actually flush this out and do it properly. If we're going to go down that route, let's do it properly, because we're talking millions and millions of dollars. We're not talking like hundreds of thousands, we're talking millions if we're going to do it properly. So I just want to throw that out because I'm still stuck. I still don't know which way I'm going. Thanks.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. For Mr. Lindsay, the option number 2, would that in fact flush out more with this particular group as well as the Prosperity Corporation to look at the different ideas that they have been working on as far as coming to a solution? And the reason I'm asking that question is because the option number 1 does not talk about going to a one source company. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about going to a one source company. I'm trying to flush it out so that we can move forward in the best possible way. So I'm just wondering, would the second option have been the better way for coming to more solutions?
Thank you through the chair. I think the attempt of the second option was to come back to the committee with something that was more closely aligned with what was being proposed. It's not exactly what's being proposed, because I think under option 2, the city would have to take more of an ownership of this. It would really have to become our table that's setting up, and we'd be doing the procurement. It would be a message from this committee and council that the idea is important to us. We want to move forward with it. We're gonna put resources behind it, and we're gonna take more of an active participant role. Stakeholders would absolutely be critical in that and be part of the governance of that. But it's much more the city acknowledging that this is something we want to do, and we're gonna take the bull by the horns.
So, Chair, if I just might ask the question, then have we not been doing that? Because my impression has always been that the city's been very much jumping in and trying the very best that we could to find solutions. I mean,
and I think that's a good point through the chair. And again, it's as outlined in the report. Certainly, this council, last council, have been very supportive of affordable housing in the more traditional ways that municipalities are.
yes,
Land grants, policies,
exactly, exactly.
through your rent supplements. The city has not been and is not a developer. We do not build housing. We're not a developer of land. And that was the discussion that the council was having 2023 is, do we want to take a more active role? Do you want to set up a municipal housing authority or a development corporation? Do we want to take a more active role and become a developer? Do we want to build housing? The answer at that time was not to pursue it. This is kind of opening that door again. And the motion that was passed, I think I said in the report, the motion that was passed by GPC is significant because it really kind of sends a signal that, yeah, council wants to open this door again and look, do we step outside those traditional roles that you're talking about and become more of play a bigger role in providing housing?
Okay. I think I'm still leaning towards option number 1 because I'm hoping that 75,000 under with the leadership of the Prosperity Corporation behind it, that we do look at all of the options, including having the city take a larger, more determined role. I just think we need to look at everything, because what we're doing it's just not enough. Thank you.
Councillor Manley.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if this option 1 fails, I'm prepared to move option 2. I think we need to be moving along on something here, and I'm ready to get moving. Thanks.
Councillor Brown.
From my perspective, option 2 is a far more supportable one. Like, to me, that shows a far more intentional approach of getting it out there, allowing all parties to consider it. And provide some proposals which can then be weighed on what is the approach that council would think is the best way to work with stakeholders and approach this problem and work with the community. So I think it's a far better than just and then the RFP, I would assume, would be outlining deliverables, at least in a certain sense of expectations and what the final action plan is to look like, what are the goals, and to me that would be a very important piece of the puzzle when investing that sort of money into an action plan. Thank you.
Thanks. So, to my mind, I really appreciate what we're seeing from the speakers today, the initiative that's being taken by the community, and the strong desire we're seeing from our frontline housing providers, from our academics, from our private developers, and that's just captured in our own delegations today. But these are the folks who can really move the dial on this because they have the knowledge, the expertise, and the actual delivery and operational experience when it comes to providing housing that people can actually afford. So to my mind, option 1 speaks to council and council's desire to put our faith in this new group that has come forward and said that you want to act on this and that you're taking a truly collaborative community approach. And I really love that for us. Someone once told us that the cavalry isn't coming on this issue. And so like we are our own cavalry on this. So constantly waiting for the province to come through and do something, it's not working for us. So that's why we're trying to use the resources that we have at the community level to leverage all of the power that we have collectively. I was sort of seeing these two motions as complementary because I think it's important to do the first piece around facilitating this pilot project, but then I am interested in what could potentially come through an RFP. And what I thought I heard the delegation say was that, particularly Leven with Anchor, you're not expecting or needing to be the one that gets selected to do this work. You want to help facilitate us get on the path to being able to do this. And if it's someone else that comes in with the expertise and ability to do that, then that's something you support because it means action on our most critical issue, which is housing that people can actually afford. And we've had conversations in the past about a development corporation, and there just wasn't the strong shared collective agreement from council on moving forward with that. And some councillors have been in the seat a while, and I haven't seen a motion that we move in that direction. So if people are suddenly so passionate about it, I'd love to hear it, but like we haven't been on that path. And you know, similar to planting a tree, like, yeah, the best time to start a development corporation was 25 years ago. The second best time is today, but a development corporation is going to take a much bigger financial amount of seed money than what we're talking about here with starting this housing lab. And I don't think we're there in terms of the multi-millions of dollars we would have to have in order to launch a real development corporation. But what I'm hearing through this proposal is we have local experts who are already working in this sector who are sort of willing to take on this work alongside all of the other things that they're doing. And I think that's admirable and pretty exciting and a creative way of us tackling a really complicated problem. And if we can put in $300,000 and that leads to even a couple hundred units of below market rate rentals in Nanaimo, I think that would be incredible. And I'm willing to believe that that's possible. And so I think for that reason, I will support option 1, but I do think option 2 could be something that needs to come either today or very shortly in order to facilitate us making sure that there aren't other people out there who are super keen to do this work for this amount of money as well. So for that reason, I'm going to support option 1 today. Councillor Manley has a question. Oh, he wants me to call the question. Yes, I'm prepared to do that. All in favor of option 1? I see Mayor Krogh, Councillor Gesselbrecht, myself, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Perino, Councillor Manley, and all opposed. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Brown, that motion carries. Thank you very much. And so now we shall move into our next report on a green Nanaimo tree risk management and maintenance policy. Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Good afternoon, Chair Eastmere and committee members. Some green relief now. We have 2 reports coming up. The first one will be covered by Ms. McDonald, who is our Manager of Park Operations. And this is a new tree risk management policy. It gives Council an opportunity to consider formalizing our current management practices. Nanaimo, as you know, has a significant portion of tree coverage, and a good portion of that is under the city's control. And as staff work to manage that risk, this policy gives us the ability to be clear with the community and around expectations of what we can manage and how to manage that. So without further ado, Ms. McDonald, thank you.
Good afternoon. My presentation will just give some background on the report and the policy that you have in front of you. So the city of Nanaimo has a very healthy and extensive urban forest canopy. We'll be hearing more about that in the subsequent presentation that Charlotte Davis will be giving. But we currently manage 983 hectares of city-owned tree canopy. 686 hectares of that is located in city-owned park and natural area, and 297 hectares of it is on city streets. So this policy encompasses both what is currently in on city property, both in park and road right-of-way. We regularly receive tree-related service requests. Honestly, we get one of these probably every day, if not more a day. And of course, we have higher levels of these when there's a wind or storm event. The scope of the service requests includes hazard trees, fallen trees, vegetation debris, and maintenance of city-owned trees as well. The examples that you see in front of you highlight a couple of the recent incidents that we've had with trees during wind events. The top one is the storm of November 2024. It's Neck Point Park. It's actually the tree that hit the ferry gnome door, if you know the park. And the one below is Departure Bay Road. It's a tree from Wardropper Park, and you can see it's over utility lines and blocking Departure Bay Road. Some of you know or probably tried to drive down Departure Bay Road when that was there. So these are the types of risk that we experience very regularly on city-owned trees. But these are both extreme cases, of course. And the reason that we really want to have this form of policy, it's actually been in the works for a number of years, but of course we're having more and more events that really highlight the need for this, and it helps to clarify the expectations of services that our operations staff and the city in general offer to the public. And it also helps to support our risk management documentation. We've actually worked quite closely with MIABC, our insurance provider, through the review and development of this policy. So why a tree risk management policy? First of all, it helps to establish a risk-based framework. It helps establish consistent risk-based management of the maintenance of city trees. It also helps us to balance the benefits and risk as well as our internal resources. So trees offer a number of benefits, including ecological, aesthetic, and community benefits. Depending on the conditions, they can present risk, and we have to have a balanced approach when we're dealing with trees that supports both public safety and the responsible use of municipal resources. Having a policy helps us to be consistent and transparent with how we deal with all tree concerns. It helps support clear service expectations, both to the public and to staff. And it offers transparency for the public to get and how we are guiding staff decisions. And it also helps us to improve our tree management practices. And the last reason for why to have a policy would be to support our liability and insurance claims. So as I mentioned, we worked with the insurance provider to develop this policy. One of the questions that they ask regularly when we are dealing with claims is, do we have a council adopted risk management policy? And until now, we haven't. So documenting and having clear expectations through a policy like this helps to show our due diligence, and it also helps to clarify the risk management processes that the city has in responding effectively to insurance and liability matters related to trees. So why a risk-based approach? First of all, trees inherently present risk. They're often, they have internal defects sometimes, they can have diseases. Some of them we can see from the outside and some of them we can't. There's a lot of climate pressures in our community, and our forests are constantly changing. We have trees of varied age. Again, Charlotte will be providing more information on the variety of how old and how young our tree forests are in general, but our site conditions really vary across very many city-owned properties, and it's really hard to always know. In fact, we can never know what the conditions are on each tree and what may cause failures. We really are doing our best, and we always have a risk-based approach, and this policy will help us identify some of those tree risks and trees of concern. We also have the need to prioritize. So every tree that's inspected is inspecting every tree amongst the 900 plus hectares isn't possible. But we can have appropriate levels of inspection, and we can report each of the trees of concern, which helps to prioritize tree work based on the risk. And it ensures the best value for the community and the most impactful approach. Having a policy also helps us have efficient resource allocation. Our municipal resources are directed to locations where we have the highest potential of impact, and that will always be trumped by safety, property damage, and infrastructure damage. And lastly, the last reason for why this risk-based approach is it helps to improve decision-making. So having a policy in place helps to structure consistent approaches that align with modern arboriculture practices and also our need for due diligence. So the scope of the policy is city-owned trees in parks, trails, boulevards, road right-of-ways, civic properties, and natural areas. The policy applies to formal plantings, natural areas, volunteer trees. So these are ones that we haven't formally planted, but nature has allowed the seed base to grow. And boundary encroachment areas, so this is where the tree trunk itself might be on city property, but it might also, the roots, for instance, might border onto private property, or the branches over on the air level. And it also applies to debris management. But excluded from this policy are any trees on private property. So only looking at city-owned trees. And risk mitigation. Where a tree has been assessed and deemed as having risk and requiring action, modification or removal will be undertaken in accordance with recommendations of a qualified tree assessor. Mitigation measures will be prioritized based on the assessed level of risk, implemented as soon as practicable, and having regard for public safety, operational considerations, and resource availability. So mitigation measures will be implemented to achieve the following objectives. These include reducing or removing risk to the city, staff, and the public, protecting public and private property, infrastructure, and assets, and enhancing and maintaining healthy forested habitats and ecosystems. And the image on the slide, I think, is actually a really good image that shows how, again, it's a tree on the city-owned right-of-way, but you can see it's impacting some utility lines above, and probably the branches are overhanging the private property. And again, these are highlighting complaints that we get, or questions we get on a daily basis as to where's the city's level of maintenance in dealing with interface issues between all of these public and private entities. And lastly, if the policy is adopted, there's a number of next steps that we'll be undertaking. So adoption of the policy will support operational consistency, improve transparency regarding service levels, and provide a defensible framework to support the city's response to tree-related claims and liability matters. If the policy is adopted, staff will internally work on some administrative and operating policies as a subsequent procedure to further articulate timelines and other proactive ways we do maintenance. We'll be publishing information online and allowing, and probably do some social media as well to provide more information to the public on how they report risk concerns, trees of concern. We'll be launching a tree of concern reporting tool, which you can see in one of the appendices attached to your report. We have an unpublished example of what that might look like. And we'll be updating other procedures internally to keep in step with the council adopted council policy. So thank you for your time today. Ms. Davis and I are here to answer more questions around the report, but we are hoping that either this draft report or a version of it will be adopted by council at a future date so that we can have a policy in place to guide our operations. Thank you. I'm going to start with questions from Councillor Armstrong, then Councillor Thorpe and Councillor Manley.
Thank you. Very great report. Lots of information on there. One of the concerns that I was hearing about and that I've seen, we look a lot of times like you do the trees, but it's the roots. In reading the policy, if the homeowner comes and then if you refuse, then they have to go get an ISA expert, is what I read in the legal stuff. Who pays for that? Does the homeowner have to pay for it? And if they're found to be correct, will the city reimburse them, or is that going to be on their own?
So through the chair, right now the expectation through the tree protection bylaw is that if any work is done on the private property, that it doesn't hurt the tree if the tree is on city property. So it isn't required necessarily that they have an ISA person come and prune roots, for instance. But if the tree is compromised, then there could be further issues. But it's recommended but not required always that they have, for root pruning, an ISA or qualified tree assessor do the change. But what we have been relying on for understanding the property rights is actually common law, so the law of self-help, and where it is on private property, whether it's above ground or below ground, the impact would be covered by the law of self-help, which would be what's privately owned. We don't typically cover any costs for that.
And then my second question is, if we know that the trees roots are impacting the Fortis lines, would you automatically come in and do that if Fortis requests it, or does the homeowner have to request it?
On private property or on city property? On private property. Through the chair, again, if it's on private property, we are hands off. We would do tree root pruning, et cetera, on any infrastructure that's impacted on the city side. But I can't think of any examples where we've.
So our liability would be nil, even though Fortis said we're concerned about your trees' roots, which are going into our pipes, which could cause an explosion.
On private property. Though.
Yeah. So yeah, it's still private, but it's our tree.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I was reading these.
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, to answer that question, in that kind of incident, Fortis BC would take care of that issue. Speaking more to the interface between public and private property when it comes to things like views or service lines and things like that, this policy is very clear that we maintain for risk only. And so where the homeowner may be desiring to install a new TELUS line or something like that, that would not be on the city to do the tree pruning of any volunteer trees or trees that would be in the boulevard. That would be on the homeowner in that case.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Through you, thank you very much, Ms. McDonald, for the presentation. As the city representative on the Municipal Insurance Association Committee, I'm interested in this, and I'd like to ask through the chair, if I could please, first of all, have there been, and just in a general sense, have there been many claims filed against the city related to trees? And secondly, and I think you referenced this, does our lack of policy, has that had an impact on the city's liability and as a result of those claims?
Through the chair, this one might be better answered by Ms. Gurry, but I can tell you that while I have had this role, there have been claims that have come through. I don't always know what the outcome of the claims is, but we go back through our records, typical documentation process. We look to see what has the tree been reported. We provide any information if it has, what mitigation measures were done, if any were done, and the history. Often, in some cases, it is a tree that we've known about. And we've had different assessment levels and we've done mitigation measures. And in many cases, it's a tree we didn't know about. So I wouldn't say it's a common thing, but there's definitely, there are claims that we deal with on public property all the time, including trees.
Thank you. I would suggest, in my layman's opinion, that having a policy would be very wise on the behalf of the city. So I'll certainly be supporting the establishment of policy. Thank you.
Through the chair, just to add to that, as Ms. McDonald said, since 2007, since I've been involved in claims in MIABC, there's been a number of tree falling claims. And the number one thing, as Ms. McDonald pointed out, that MIABC will ask is, do we have a policy? And a council policy is, it's a very good practice for municipalities to have, and just outlines the practices that we already do uphold, but it just puts that down in council policy. So it's a very good thing to have and to protect us.
Councillor Manley, I believe you had a question.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to see this report. It was a good read. The implementation plan, launching a tree concern reporting tool, like currently, is it just somebody phoning up the Public Works and saying one of your trees looks like it's going to be dangerous to my property, and then we act on it, or so this reporting tool will be more like an app that somebody can fill in information, or?
Through the chair, there's a number of ways the public contact us right now. One of them is through Public Works dispatch. Sometimes it's through the main city line, city switchboard. It can be through the Parks Rec and Culture switchboard. It can be through our Park Ops dispatch as well. There are some online tools also as well where you can put general inquiries in, both to many departments, and they eventually get funneled to Park Ops dispatch, which would be the holder and enter the trees of concern into our work order process. But certainly the reported tree of concern just simplifies that. We would still be accepting through all the channels, of course, any communication. And we encourage the public, when they see any concerns in our public space, to report, whether it's on trails, not just around trees. So we do get the reports from a number of ways. This is just another way, especially if you're doing an online search, to find something quicker, where it probably comes, it'll be through IT directed to the right place to receive the complaint in a direct manner.
Okay. I have another question. It's not related to trees on public parks, but we've seen emails from people who have reported trees that on private property that they've seen as dangerous trees, and they've warned about, and they've tried to get the neighbor to do something about. The tree ends up falling on their property, destroying property, causing, having them to go and live somewhere else temporarily, dealing with insurance, all of those kind of things. And I'm curious about whether staff has ever looked into what other municipalities do in terms of bylaws regarding trees. Because it would seem to me that a tree that is clearly dangerous, but is the responsibility of another homeowner, might be considered in the same kind of vein as a nuisance property. So I'm just curious whether the city's ever looked at anything like that, any kind of policy that other municipalities have, or processes around that. I know I'm throwing this out in the middle of a public trees, but we have seen a number of emails about people complaining about neighbors' trees.
Through the chair to Councillor Manley, I would say no, it's not something that we've investigated. It's purely a private property matter, and there are, as Ms. McDonald had mentioned, there's law that applies to that on the civil side, and liability that landowners would be subject to if they're made aware that a tree is a potential hazard to adjacent property, and then there's an impact from that tree. We do get questions about permits to remove hazard trees, and there are provisions in the city's tree bylaw on the private property side to address hazard trees through approvals, permitting, and through arborist assessments. There's specific tree hazard risk assessment training and assessment tools that professionals use to determine whether or not a tree constitutes a hazard. But private property risk to private property is purely a private matter that we don't weigh into.
And you don't know about other municipalities that, like any policies in other municipalities that might address those kind of concerns?
I am not aware of any myself, no.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, if I may, about when trees are encroaching over the sidewalk and are a hazard for people walking underneath. Is that, and if they originate on private property, but they're hanging over the sidewalk, similar to, there's a lot of sidewalks where there's hedges and bushes encroaching onto the sidewalk as well. How are those dealt with?
Great question. So that would be on city property then. So it would be under our jurisdiction to prune up or brush back the sides. And so that's something that the Public Works Department and currently at least the Public Works Department and Parks, Recreation and Culture Department jointly maintain, whether it's the vertical or the edge.
So the proper avenue for that, for citizens who have concerns in their neighborhood of sidewalks that are impassable or overhanging branches, is to send that information through to Public Works?
The vertical is typically something that Parks, Rec and Culture would be pruning, whereas the horizontal on a sidewalk is under the street department and Public Works. But again, we would share that information jointly depending on the type of complaint. So it could come through the report of concern of a tree, or it could come directly to a dispatch type phone call.
Okay, so contact us literally anyway, and we'll
filter it through.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
If there's no other discussion, Chair, I'd like to move option 1.
Second. I heard that seconded by Councillor Gesselbrecht. Councillor Manley, you have your mic on. Do you have a question? Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Great. I just appreciate staff putting this policy in place. I think it'll make things a lot smoother, and I like the risky tree reporting mechanism is awesome. And also with MIBC around having a trios management policy, I've heard that. And then also too, I think the discussion at the RDN is also like in general a climate risk policy, because it is important to sort of clearly state what the city will do and won't do, and having clear expectations around that. And so I think this is a great portion of a climate risk policy, and I appreciate the work done on that. Thank you.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say, I can't believe you haven't had a policy for this, so it's long overdue. I'm glad to see it. I don't understand why you can't take care of 1,000 hectares of trees, but you know what? This policy will hopefully help you to tackle the worst cases. So thank you so much.
And that was, of course, a rhetorical statement.
Very rhetorical.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands. All in favor of endorsing the recommendation? And that carries unanimously. Thank you so much for your work on this. And we're going to take a short recess and be back here in 10 minutes. Move into item 7.2. the urban canopy assessment. Ms. Bopulsing.
Thank you again, Chair. So this report is the Urban Tree Canopy Assessment, which is one of your Integrated Action Plan priorities. And the completion of this will inform a series of other documents, including one of which is our tree management policy. And I wanted to point out through the chair to Councillor Manley that some of the questions you're asking about what other municipalities are doing around tree risk and management on private property, that is we have an opportunity to do that through reviewing that particular policy when we get to it. So it's been a bit outdated and it's on our task list and it's on your task list for us to look at. So the tree canopy assessment, I found this very interesting. And so Ms. Davis is going to present on it. And in addition to our integrated action plan completion, this is also informing our monitoring strategy towards our green Nanaimo goals. So over to Ms. Davis. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee and chair. Yes, so before you, we have an information report about the urban canopy assessment, and this presentation is to illustrate the findings of that report. Staff were last in front of you last summer regarding our progress on the urban canopy assessment and the LiDAR data acquisition. So we are here to give you the final update on the report now it has been completed. It was completed this May, and we can present some findings for you. We also attempted to summarize the findings in the report in the attachment C. So Nanaimo serves as an urban centre in our community. We know that the work here is a representation of our desire to find the balance between our goals of reaching 30% canopy coverage throughout our neighbourhoods, and also the need to balance our place within our community as an urban centre. It's essentially a very, very technical report, but resulting in several useful layers of GIS that staff can really dig into. And understanding the extent and condition of the canopy is very, very essential for our work. And this is not going to be a policy that sits on a shelf and gathers dust. This is something that is actually guiding the work of the operational team in parks operations. So how did we get here? Back in 2010, we developed the Urban Forest Management Strategy, which featured a number of modules aimed at driving forward our urban forestry management goals, and that strategy set our 30% goal. And then we had the adoption of the bylaw, and then with the creation of City Plan, we also brought forward the targets and those goals, and then later as well the monitoring strategy and our ability to monitor that through the canopy dashboard analysis that was undertaken in 2024. We funded some specialised aerial photography, our LiDAR data photography, in 2025. The last time we had done that before was 2016, and so that's why you'll see there's the comparison of where we're at between 2016 to 2025. And that data, the data was so strong, we were able to hand that off to a consultant and come up with our tree canopy assessment here, which, like I said, has been very, very useful for us now and will be in the development of our future urban forest management strategy, and also the update, which we'll work on with the planning department, to our management and protection of trees bylaw. So just getting into some of the fun stuff early on here. The assessment found that the value annually of the ecosystem services provided by our urban canopy to our community are $3.7 million. And what that means is, what is the monetary cost of all the work and the services that those trees are doing to our community in terms of climate resiliency that we're not having to do by, so it cleans our air, it mitigates our stormwater, and it sequesters carbon. So all things that we are not having to do through man-made methods and infrastructure, and that is that value if we were to have to do it ourselves. And then the carbon stored. $376 million is the value of the carbon stock stored within the urban canopy across the city of Nanaimo, across all lands. And that is the value of, if all that carbon that's stored in all those trees was to get released into the atmosphere today, what would it cost to mitigate the impact of that carbon? So just the value of that. It's not about the carbon being valuable, it's about the the value of the mitigating of the impacts to the climate of that carbon sequestration. And across the bottom, you'll see all the lovely ways in which our canopy provides other benefits to our community. And then for a bit of fun through this assessment, we looked into tall trees in our community as well. There are over 500 trees taller than 30 meters. Our tallest tree was located in the area of Westwood Lake Park, and it was taller than Pacifica, a Doug fir standing over 63 meters tall. Other locations which had tall trees were Say Such an Island, Linley Valley Park, and also Colliery Dam Park too. Digging a little bit closer into some of those ecosystem benefits, the urban canopy cleans our air to a value, if we were to do it ourselves, don't quite know how we would, it's $5 million annually. Stormwater management, just intercepting all that stormwater runoff, $3.3 million annually. Sequestering carbon, it sequesters 31,000 tons of carbon from the atmosphere annually. To some considerable value. So it is wonderfully important that we continue to protect this natural resource. And then this image here shows the makeup of our urban canopy across our community. We know that 39% of our city, that's all lands in the city, are covered with the urban canopy. That represents 3,700 hectares of urban forest. And the map illustrates along the areas where we have potential and future tree planting areas, and also areas that are unsuitable for planting due to site conditions, like maybe impervial surfaces, parking lots, construction, buildings, that kind of thing. Importantly, city-owned properties make up only 13% of all of Nanaimo's land. It's actually quite a big number, and most of that is parkland, but it's only 13%, yet we have 19% of the city's urban forest, which demonstrates that municipal lands are carrying a proportionately larger share of the overall canopy, and the city-owned lands also have an average canopy cover of 65% as well, so another important fact there. So the report also looked at gains and losses of canopy, as I mentioned earlier, between 2016 and 2025, because that was when we last collected our LiDAR data. There was an overall net gain in the canopy, and we took some time to understand this because, you know, at first, being an urban centre, we might be kind of surprised to hear that. The net gain was 5.3%, and the net gain was driven by trees growing, natural regeneration, the fact that 13% of land within the city is protected, it's city-owned, the majority of that is parkland. And here you can see an image of Linley Valley, of where those, by nature of it being a park, those trees have grown and the canopy has filled in. There was also losses of urban canopy within this same time frame. Like I said, we did have an overall net gain. However, we did lose 269 hectares of urban canopy within that time frame, largely from development and construction, but also as well from windstorms and drought stress. And then, of course, like everything, trees have a natural lifespan as well. And so there would be some mortality there and some maintenance removals required as well, driving that. So there were some interesting additional findings that we made as part of this report. Nanaimo's riparian areas, we drilled into those, and they have an average canopy cover of 60%. Not bad, pretty good, but also, and when we're thinking about the need to shade our riparian areas and our streams for health of salmon and our environment, we know that we may want to do better there. Nanaimo's urban canopy could increase. It might be projected to be increased if this status quo continues by a further 7% within the next 20 years. Another interesting fact, 7% of Nanaimo's impervious surfaces are covered by tree canopy. That is a hard to do thing to cover our impervious surfaces. But when we're thinking about roads and streets and where our residential neighborhoods are, particularly in the downtown, street trees creating that shade, it creates a more livable neighborhood, a safer neighborhood, a place where people are proven to be happier, and also reduces the heat island effect. So that is why we continue on and will continue on, and now with this data, to know where we should focus our tree planting efforts. Also, interestingly, thinking about road dedication, there are 297 hectares of tree canopy along road dedication. So that's some of those relate to the calls that Ms. McDonald was mentioning too. A lot of the time we have people very, very eager within our community. We have the problem of having more volunteers than we can manage, and a very, very eager community to see more tree planting opportunities. Tree planting must be done in the right place. In order for the tree to be able to live out its natural life. And so informed tree planting is very, very important. And so this canopy assessment has really helped us understand the areas within our community that are suitable for planting trees. 11% of all the land within the city of Nanaimo has been found to be suitable for the planting of trees. Approximately 106 hectares of that potential property is within city-owned land, which represents 10% of the city's planting opportunity and 8.3% of all city-owned land. So 8.3% of all city-owned land is suitable for future planting, which is something that we can work on with our parks crews and with our volunteer opportunities as well. But even more importantly than that, and this will direct our future work, is that 73% of Nanaimo's potential planting area is located on private property. So our urban forestry management strategy will really get into that. And how can we push that and how can we drive that in that sector, especially in a climate resilient way, which is very important, as we know, with the challenges that we're currently facing. So next steps, as we've mentioned, the urban forestry management strategy will be up and developed with our planning department along the same timeline as the updated management and protection of trees bylaw, and we will continue to monitor our urban forestry as well to that 30% goal. We obviously now are in a very, very data-rich position, and we will do my best to answer questions. That is everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And this was a super interesting report to read, so appreciated all of the information in it. Councillor Manley?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm curious about some of the trees that we do plant, and one of the areas, like I was looking at Vancouver on Google Maps, and there's a section of Broadway where you can't even tell Broadway's there because of the trees they plant in the boulevard, and they just cover, you're basically driving through a tunnel. And I noticed that some of the trees along Terminal Avenue, but also on Bowen Road, that are planted in the intersection, they seem to be trees that don't spread out, but they go straight up. Is that just a goal in terms of like the types of trees we plant, that we don't really want to spread out over the road so much?
Through the chair to Councillor Manley, it certainly will have been a consideration in the selection of trees. I think it is somewhere we may want to consider going, which could be like a recommended tree planting list, one that is climate resilient and provides the most impact, and that would need to be balanced with maintenance. So for every tree we plant, we may also have to come by and sweep up the leaves and manage the debris.
Yeah, and then with trees that are going into the boulevards, are we starting to use that those root catchment things that we used on Commercial Drive? Is that sort of a new standard for us in terms of planting on boulevards?
Through the chair, it isn't an accepted formalized new standard. However, in the areas of Commercial Street and other areas like that, we need to be including that in all of our projects. And that we have recently, the trees in Westwood Lake Park were the first trees that we planted in parks using soil cells. And for our future in our highly developed parks, that will be what we look to include. Yes.
Okay, and then just finally, I just want to say I appreciate on Commercial, we have some big trees on Commercial Street that were where the roots had broken up the paving stones and they were a tripping hazard. And I've noticed now that there's a rubberized treatment that goes around that. And that means that tree is going to stay as is for a while, hopefully?
Through the chair, that is a great example of an attempt to absolutely manage the green and the grey assets and keep that valuable tree working in symmetry with the sidewalk there. And we look forward to finding more opportunities to utilize technology such as that to the benefit of the canopy and also to maintain our accessibility to our sidewalks. It's definitely a balancing act, and I think there's more of that to come, yes.
Yeah, I think there's some opportunities right at 6 Commercial with the big trees that where the building went down, but it's nice to be able to keep those old trees in the community and leave them standing. It's important for shade. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, if I might. The report was excellent, a lot to read. So if I missed this, please, feel free to tell me. But I'm just wondering, given what Councillor Manley was talking about, because I've seen that too, where sometimes these gorgeous trees will rip up sidewalks and paths and so forth. When you go into a particular area where you are thinking that you want to add trees, do you label what kind of trees are meant for those areas and give the volunteers and staff, do they have like a plan of which trees are the ones to plant and where? Because it's not just downtown, although I agree, I've seen that too, where the cement is ripped up. You've got to plan ahead. What about all of our other areas, paths included?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, all of our planting is undertaken with a thorough planting plan in place,
Great.
Which is reviewed by our arboricultural staff and also our manager of parks operations. Okay. And then secondarily to that, we also do have to just understand that with the planting of trees will come maintenance. And we can cut some of that off at the pass by doing some soil cells and root barrier work, which can be expensive. Tree planting work is not just the cost of a tree. However, if you want to have this asset for its full life and for it to realize its full value, it is worth that early investment. Secondarily to that as well, there will always be ongoing maintenance.
Okay, wonderful. I love the way this city looks. The tree canopy it's gorgeous. I just one other question. On your second slide, you had the ecosystem services and benefits, 367 million of carbon stored. That's dollars. Is that per year? I just wondered, yes, is that?
It's not annual. It's the overall value of that carbon stored if it was all to get to released into the atmosphere, okay, what it would cost to mitigate the impact of that carbon.
So there's no sort of date as to how long that money is calculated for?
It's for the whole of our canopy on this date.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. So the overall canopy in the city has grown. Do we have a way of determining how much of that has been near large existing green spaces versus new canopy in less treed areas?
We do, and so with the data that we have through this assessment, it was far more than just a report. It was several GIS layers that we were able to go back, and we would be able to find that through manipulating the data.
Okay,
I can get back to you on that.
Okay, that would be really interesting to hear. And then, so potentially using that data, will neighborhood-specific canopy metrics be used to determine what the priority areas are for new trees to be planted?
That is correct. So we will be using this data to prioritize all of our activities.
And then I heard Councillor Manley mention, and you say it was potentially possible to have a policy around prioritizing the planting of native BC trees wherever possible.
I think I was mentioning that we may want to get into having a planting list and a recommended list of plantings, and that we would want for that to be climate resilient. Yes.
Yeah, that certainly sounds like something that is going to be critical to balance both the desire to have native trees, but then also responding to climate change. Is this something that's more operational, or would that be more of a council direction?
I think it's something that we could bring forward as part of the urban forest management strategy.
Okay. Yeah, look forward to seeing that. Are there any, Councillor Gesselbrecht?
Great, thanks. Super pleased to see this canopy assessment done. It's super exciting, and also just seeing the basis for which it'll help with decision making with the urban forestry management plan. Like the analysis of looking at neighborhoods and like seeing the ones that don't have a much canopy, and the socioeconomic analysis on that as well, and like looking to really target those neighborhoods, because it does make an incredible difference to the feel and the livability of it. I think there was a council policy that was passed and accepted in the OCP around prioritization of fruit trees in parks, and I think that's something to keep in mind. And in some neighborhoods, it's really lovely to walk around and seeing kids out picking plums and apples and figs and stuff, and it does take a bit of maintenance, but in the appropriate place, it really does enhance and also looks at food security. Yeah, I'm just really grateful that this work is providing empirical basis to make our decision around, and I think an important part too will be the tree bylaw as well, which is a critical piece of how it all fits together. And so I look forward for that coming up here in 2027, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gasselbrecht. I had a question that was shared also by a local expert who's actually in the audience today. Thank you, Zach Simon, for being here. Can consideration be given to installing native deciduous trees on the south side of east-west oriented streets and the west side of north-south ones? And the point of this is that it ensures that leaves are present during hot summer months when shade is needed, but absent in winter when more sunlight and warmth are welcome for pedestrians. And I thought that was a really helpful perspective on how the type of trees that we plant are impactful in winter and summer.
Thank you for that suggestion. Yes, with the way our planting plans are developed, they really are very granular. And so we have the ability to decide exactly which tree goes in exactly which location. So I think that's an interesting suggestion and one I would like to discuss with the technical team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I saw a question from Mayor Krogh.
Thank you very much, Chair. Did I miss something, or we're not getting a delegation?
I'm sorry. Yes. Pardon me. Deanna Fort is on Zoom. And Deanna, if you are there, you are welcome to join us as a delegation for 5 minutes. Thank you. Apologies for not going to you first before we jumped into our discussion. We were so keen. Deanna, you're still on mute there. And once you have unmuted, there you go.
Okay, hi. Yes, I was getting worried. Thank you, Mayor.
Pardon me, you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, hello. I'm Deanna Fort, and I'm from the. I live in the city of Nanaimo, and I'm representing the Nanaimo Climate Action Hub, and I'm here just to offer our support for the Green Nanaimo presentations that were made today. And I just, I think actually last week, Mayor Krogh made a comment about people not being there in support of climate action, and only to make note of it when there was concerns. So yes, we are concerned. And in fact, recent survey said that 80% of Canadians do express concerns about climate change and its potential harms for our future. So taking climate action and thinking about trees is really super important. So the trees, our urban tree canopy, as noted in the reports, do offer considerable protection for us from the hazards of climate change. And one of them most notably, of course, is the heat island effect. But they also help with flood mitigation, helping to reduce the amount of stormwater going to the storm drainage system. And additionally, importantly, they also as mentioned in the report about air pollution. So trees really do provide that protection of filtering and cleaning our air. So again, I think somebody from the audience mentioned about planting trees strategically for heat mitigation. You can also plant trees strategically for air pollution. So, between a schoolyard and a busy road, planting trees there would help to protect the air quality or keep the air quality better for the children in schoolyard. And as climate intensifies and we get hotter weather, the effects of air pollution will be more intensified as well. So those kind of things are really great, and I'm really happy to see that the things that the city has considered in their policy, because they both talking particularly about the equity part of it, is trying to get trees into places where we don't have trees right now. And I think that's extremely important, particularly when we're considering about the heat island effect. I think one of the areas that is of concern is the private land. And I mean, it's a much more difficult for the city to try and use levers and tools to encourage the growth of large trees on private lands. And the most important trees in our forests, in our urban forests, are those large trees. And if they're actually growing in a forest setting, so along with other understory shrubs and trees and plants, they actually provide those services much better. So in terms of carbon sequestration, carbon storage, air cleaning, and the cooling effect. So there's, if we have little forests everywhere, that would be very advantageous. And there is, in fact, Nature Canada, through research done out of UBC, has promoted the idea of not just 30% tree canopy for every neighborhood, but that every neighborhood, every person's home should be within 300 meters. This is a rough guideline, mind you, of a treed area. So, and the idea of that is that then if they do not have the cooling that is needed in their home, 300 meters is a walkable distance. So they can go into that forest and experience a cool space. So those are some guidelines. And I think the city is, with this policy, it's a good step forward in that regard. And then just to come up with some ideas on ways to work with private landowners to try and retain those large trees that are on their lands. We've had, the council knows that they've had a lot of people out concerned about Cable Bay and recently around Barrington Road, and even in the park with Loudon Park. People in Nanaimo do want to see those large trees, and those are super important. So how can we keep them while the city develops? And I think those are some of the real challenges going forward for staff and council to consider. And certainly the tree bylaw, there are some mechanisms there, but perhaps some of those could be strengthened to protect large trees, not just necessarily ones that are native. I know there's I have a huge English oak in my backyard that I benefit from. It's actually my neighbor's yard. And I thought, wow, if they cut that down, that would make a significant impact on my on the shade in my yard. But however, that tree is not protected. At least that's my understanding. So yeah, that's basically what I'm my presentation, and I thank you for the opportunity to provide it.
Thank you, Ms. Fort. Does anyone have questions for the delegation? Thank you so much for being here online and for sharing your perspective and that of the Nanaimo Climate Action Hub. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I had an additional question around the riparian area protections that you mentioned, and you hinted that improvements could be possible. And in going down some riparian area protection rabbit holes recently, I was reading about how the recommended standard is a 30-meter setback or buffer on the south side of particularly wetlands because of the sun impacts. Because I wondered why just the south side, but it's because of the sun and the shading effects. And so can you speak a little bit more to what potential riparian area improvements you were thinking of when you mentioned that?
Yes, I was mostly speaking with regard to the potential to prioritize tree planting projects on city-owned lands in riparian areas to continue shading. We have a number of restoration projects that we are working on. Many of them are in and around streams, and I think that this assessment could further underscore the importance of continuing those and even expanding that program.
Could you mention maybe a couple of those key projects? I'm interested to hear where these riparian areas are that we're replanting. I know I've been working with NALT and the Seed Agrihood down along the Robbins Park area to better shade the Cat Stream.
That's a great example, yes, in partnership with volunteers. And there have been other ones in the area of the Millstone behind the curling club. And there'll be, and of course, East Wellington Park. Thank you. And I'm hearing about some good ones in the area of Chase River and behind in the stream there. So,
okay, cool. I'm excited to see staff keen to say which projects are happening because I know there's a
we
lot.
have a lot. Yes, thank you, Ms.
Yeah,
McDonald.
that's awesome to hear. Thank you. Not seeing any other questions. Okay, so I will thank staff for the comprehensive presentation and really look forward to the report coming in 2027 Q2. Ms. Gurry?
There's nobody that signed up for questions. So.
Thank you. So no questions. So that does take us to adjournment, and that is moved by Councillor Perino. It is seconded by Councillor Manley. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.